Hello, and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show. My name is Ray Walters. In today's episode, I will be talking to a registered dietitian, Christ-centered life coach, and master meditation teacher, making her perspective deep and broad. She used to suffer from anxiety, but was able to overcome it using meditation and prayer. She's now devoted to helping others fast-track a spiritual awakening, increase inner power, and live an authentic life. With me today here at the Author Roundup, Miss Tonyah Dee. Hi, Tonyah. Good day to you.
Hi, Ray. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, welcome to the show and congratulations on publishing your book with Westport Press.
Thank you. It feels different to be a published author, so I'm super excited to now be able to share it.
Let's go through that. Tonyah, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, can you please indulge us, all our viewers through our YouTube channel and our podcast platforms, indulge us by introducing yourself?
Well, Ray, you did a pretty good job. I have a lot of different chapters in my life. I was a registered dietitian and I went through a divorce. And I realized after I went through a divorce, I had a lot of anxiety. And I realized we can't just be focused on the body as I was as a registered dietitian, that in order to make permanent changes, we have to go into deeper realms of the body. And I call that the soul and the spirit. So I've dedicated my really maybe the last 20, 25 years after my divorce to finding ways of really reaching those inner realms, those deeper aspects of us as a human being, and being able to work on transformation so that I have no anxiety. So that's what I really want to know about people, that people to know about me, is that inner transformation is completely at our disposal. It's in our hands. It's inside of us.
Right.
And yeah, so that's me. And now I'm really dedicated to teaching my practice to groups of people. And I no longer work as a registered dietitian because I just felt that it was too limiting. So now I'm more of a coach and motivating aspect leader to help quite a few people do this transformation. So that's really who I am now.
Right. Well, we're very much excited to have you in today's episode and to know that you're a dietitian and you've also touched a little about looking inwards. And there's, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a realm there that we need to tap into. And all these that you have mentioned, these are going to be discussed in your book, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you recently published your book entitled How to Meditate with Jesus, 8 Steps to Connect with a Higher Power and Be Set Free. And this book that you've published also includes a 40-day workbook, journal, and doodle art. So can you please tell us more about this book that you have published?
Okay, I'm just going to do a little thing like this. So here's my book. I'm on the cover with my little Chihuahua dog. Yeah, he's my little meditator. So what I tried to do with this book is make it very simple for people to start a meditation, and I believe in prayer. This is kind of more of a connecting to the presence that we're trying to get to, like that deeper spiritual realm is prayer. So I didn't want to write a big thick book about meditation, too intellectual. I have short easy chapters that take you through how to get to this place. So it's a daily practice, the body, the breath, the word, the
Mhm.
spirit, the heart, the soul, and
Okay.
then prayer. And as you're going through these easy chapters, I have a little practice at the end of each chapter. And
Mhm.
the goal is to be able to realize these parts of our humanness that have really some power to it, like a daily practice of connecting to our body and what's inside has a lot of power to it. Our breath, connecting to our breath, a lot of
Mhm.
power to it. Our word, our thoughts, a lot
Mhm.
of power. Our spirit, our heart, our soul, which is very difficult to understand. I think this is what makes my book very, very unique is I explain to people what the soul is. And people might call that the ego, the personality, our identity. But it's critical that you make friends with your own soul. You understand what that is inside of you. So that is the last chapter of really getting to know who you are.
Mhm.
And then prayer is at the end. So once you have that real self-awareness of these different levels of, actually I just call it different levels of power, of inner power, then you're more grounded and you become more clear in order to ask for what you want and connect to that different source.
Right.
So my book is meant to be kind of fun. Like it's easy 8 chapters. And like you said, I've got doodle art in it, journal questions. There's a lot of space in my book. So here's some doodle art
Yeah.
to, sit and contemplate while you're doing this practice. But it's supposed to be get through the book and do
Something you
this.
read daily.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally, but some of us can't do things daily, right?
Right.
So, what I
Mhm.
really try to recommend to people is take a season of your life. It's
Mhm.
just a season,
Right. Right.
it's just a period. But once you take this season or this period and you really discover these aspects of ourselves, then the rest of your life goes a little bit more smooth. So, that's my book. It's just to be used for ideally a season or the rest of your life. You'll come away with practical tools that
Mhm.
help you in the outside world, not just when you're sitting and going inside.
Right. Well, what's interesting about your book is that it has this 40-day workbook. So what came into my mind while I was going through it is that if I will read your book, I'll try to get acquainted and perhaps be master the 8 steps that you have there and start my 40-day journey. Is that what the book is going to be like, this workbook also that you have?
Yeah, so people have said the book's really easy to read.
I, yeah,
And
okay.
a lot of people just can't put it down because it actually also has my narrative, my story. In each chapter, how I kind of went through my journey from real anxiety and anxiety disorder to no anxiety. So the goal is at the very end, really what I want people to do is do the practice
Right.
and not get hung up too much on all the intellectual stuff, right? It's you have to understand what you're doing. That's the first part of the book. The second part of the book is practicing it, and then that's when truth really becomes a reality, not just understanding it, but when you're actually trying to do the practice. And each day has like a little page with prompts that you can go to. What is your soul saying today? What are you resisting? What do you need? What are you praying for? And ideally, of course, a 40-day practice is supposed to be every day. but that's really, really difficult to do.
Right there. Yeah.
So the goal of it is to also, the days that you don't do it, how is your soul responding to yourself? Are you judging yourself? Are you criticizing yourself? Do you just give up? So it's all about getting to really know yourself and be all of these aspects. That's one of the reasons why I bring Jesus in,
Mhm,
because he's about mercy and forgiveness and
mhm.
compassion. And
Right.
we learn to do that on ourselves during that 40-day practice.
Sounds like a very interesting book. Now, what inspired you? What inspired the idea for your book?
Okay, well, here we go. I'm going to take a little bit of a deep dive into a personal experience.
Mhm.
So I had anxiety really bad, and the doctor told me to either take medicine or learn to meditate. And this was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and there wasn't a lot of meditation around back then.
Right.
I chose to learn to meditate, and it took me down these paths, like into Eastern spiritual text, Eastern practices. I took an 8-year meditation training, 8 years.
Wow.
And during this time, I was still studying the Bible, the Western spiritual texts, and I have a science major.
Mhm.
So I'm comparing Western, Eastern, and science, and a lot of it all says the same thing. So it was early one morning in my meditation practice that I started hearing, and I call it God's voice.
Mhm.
It's a different voice from the voice of my soul. And
Okay.
this is what, ideally we want people to tap into, is this inner wisdom, this
Mhm.
inner guidance system that we have, that leads us down paths that are really good for us,
Right.
even if we resist it at first.
Mhm.
So this voice started saying to me, Tonyah, I think you should make a meditation and chant music. Okay, I'm a registered dietitian. And I was,
Yeah.
what? What is this voice? And it was very consistent. So I said, okay, I love music. I love chanting. I learned that from the Eastern spiritual practices.
Mhm.
And as soon as I said yes, I started being woken up in the morning by songs. While
Okay.
I was meditating, songs were flowing out of me. I met a musician. I met someone with a recording studio. So they call this God's grace. Like
Mhm.
when you answer a call and you're like, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. But you say okay to the call. They say God will step in and give you this grace, this serendipity, this providence, because it was his idea to get it done. And you're just the vessel. So, anyway, I have 3 albums of devotional chant music.
Okay.
And it's on Spotify, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. People love my music. Well, that's what's happened. So, as I continue to meditate in the mornings, I'm just guided. I'm
Mhm.
guided. So, God said, now I want you to write a book about
Mhm.
what you're doing in the morning, how
Okay.
you're practicing. So that's really the inspiration for my book. I call it a divine appointment. Like it's an
Mhm.
appointment, and they might call it God's will for my life. It's my life purpose. So I do believe, these inner callings can lead us to our divine purpose. And once we're on that path, it's very joyful.
Right.
So that was the inspiration for my book.
That's a very good inspiration. How long did it take you to finish the entire book?
Well, okay, so I started the book probably 10 years ago.
Okay. Right.
But so what happened is as I was writing the book, I was writing the Western spirituality, Eastern spirituality, and science all together. And my book got too big. It was really thick. And I said, I never wanted to write a book about meditation practice that ends up too intellectual, too thick. So in the last 3 years, 3 or 4 years, I went through my book and I took what I felt was the most important from each of the 8 chapters and I wrote this workbook.
Okay.
So eventually I'll release the bigger book that's a
Mhm.
deep dive for people who want to be a little more intellectual maybe, or just really understand the connections between those three aspects: physical, psychological, and spiritual aspects of ourself. So, but for now,
Quite a long time for you to have. Well, you said that it all began to be a thick book, and you decided that you're going to sort of like write a book that is about meditation, correct? Now, let's start with the fun part. There's always a fun part when you're writing a book. So can you describe, can you tell us what was the fun part in writing this book?
okay. So I came up with the idea that it would be fun to have doodle art throughout my book because there's something I actually like about doodle art.
Yeah.
It's actually not really a waste of time for me when I do it. Like
Okay.
I'm doing the drawing the little things in, and I just hear a lot of messages. I don't know what it is. It's just kind of it's something that engages my mind.
Mhm.
So my mind's not thinking. So I can kind of hear from those deeper realms. So I asked my publisher if he had an illustrationist,
Okay.
and he said, no, we have a timeline here, and I think you should do the illustrations. And I was like, okay. So this was in the middle of winter. I went and spent 1 week in a cabin. It was all snowing outside.
Mhm.
And I did my art. I did my doodle art. And I'll have to say, it was such a magic, like, time. It turned out to be fun. I liked it. And the drawings came out really nice and fun. So anyway, it brought out a whole different aspect of my personality. And it just makes the book a lot lighter. I had somebody tell me that I should take all my doodle art out and make a little coloring book for children, even.
Okay.
So that was definitely the most fun part about my book.
So how about, well, there's always an opposite, polar opposite of things. There's the fun part, obviously. There's the, let's just say, challenging part in completing your work. And I'm quite sure that our listeners and viewers are very much interested to know. A lot of our listeners and viewers are aspiring authors too. And so there's always this story where this is the fun part of my book, and I've enjoyed doing this while I was writing my book. Now, how about the difficult part, the challenging part? What made the writing process for you difficult?
The most challenging part is actually fine-tuning the book.
Right.
So I have kind of a research background as a dietitian. I don't
Mm.
mind researching things. It's kind of fun. But when it comes to reading your book over and over and over, and I think I've read my book 1,000 times. You have an editor, and she
Right.
goes through and makes the changes she thinks, that need to be necessary. She passes the book back to me. You have to read the entire book again, and you'll come up with some changes, and you send it back to her. And it goes back and forth. And then when you bring a publisher in,
Mhm.
they want to read it, and it goes back and forth again.
Okay.
That part, to me, it's like, and when it comes back, you feel like there's a deadline. You want to put it back to that other person as fast as you can so you can move the book forward. So it's like a hot potato. Like it goes to them and then to you and then to them and then to you, and you're like, here, no, here, no. And you
Right.
pass it back and forth. And I have to say, you kind of have to make it a priority. Like you have to stop everything in your life to read your book again, because it's your baby. So I'd say that
How
was
do
the
you
most
stay
fun.
committed? How do you, because, well, when it's fun, it's easy to do, right? But when it becomes difficult or challenging, now it's going to take a little time. So, because, well, not all, but some of us, including myself, perhaps would probably procrastinate because,
Mm.
it we're now at the difficult part of doing it. And in your case, it was the editing, it was the sending of the manuscript back and forth, back and forth. How did you stay committed to make sure that this is going to be done?
I think for me personally is I do really believe it's going to help people. And, the idea of a spiritual awakening, like, so even the 12-step program in alcoholics recovery, like the 12th step, you go through quite a bit of inner work, like a lot of inner work, kind of the same thing you're doing in my book.
Mhm.
And the 11th step is to have a meditation and prayer practice. So my book fits really well into that 11th step. Why
Right.
it's the 11th step is because it's so important to really get to that point where you can go inside and you can meditate and you can pray. Well, the 12th step is to have a spiritual awakening and
Mhm.
then get out and serve people. So, what I think happened to me is this is my service, and I know it's my service. And I'm at that 12th step. I've had a spiritual awakening. I hope that people read my book, they have a spiritual awakening. And now I'm really driven in, like, it's a nice pace. It's not stressful. I try to tell myself this is my pace.
Right.
But because I want to get the book out into the world, I don't mind. I don't really mind reading it again and again. On some level, I don't mind. So that's for me personally. I just know it's service. And I do think when people write books, they're birthing some service to somebody, because whether it's a narrative, somebody may relate to your story, or a
Right.
nonfiction book, you're going to help somebody. Or really, you must already be like at least called into that spiritual awakening or be awakened already. Or maybe there's something along that path that you really need to address so that the channel does become open for you.
Right. Now, your book, you had this published with Wespo Press.
Mm.
That would have been several months ago. Was it March or April that your book came out? So, have you had feedback already or a review from people you've given your book to, or from people who bought your book? What's the nicest feedback did you receive?
I think this is for sure the most fun part. Is I had a big book launch party, and like everybody I knew came and everybody bought my book. And these are people that I highly respect.
Right.
And these are friends just that
Mhm.
I've known all my life,
Mhm.
right? And when somebody says, I can't put your book down, or your book is bringing me peace just to read it,
Right.
or I really am crying and there's something I'm getting out just reading your book. These little comments from people I know it's so gratifying. It's so gratifying. And then what's interesting is the first review on my book in Amazon was somebody I
Mhm.
didn't even know. And he hadn't even finished the book, and he felt compelled to write a 5-star review about how great my book was. So I was like, I want to meet this guy, who are you? So the comments coming in are just so nice.
That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, with your experience from pen to paper, and then, well, technically it's not on paper because I know you're using your computer for that, but from pen to paper and finally to your book now, which is a very lovely cover. I'm sure some of our viewers and listeners are aspiring authors and they would want to hear an advice coming from you. What advice will you be able to give them, especially when they're working on their first book?
Yeah, I think we hear this a lot. I think I heard it too, but the writing process is a creative process. It's not just an intellectual process. So when I explain the soul, I do explain like our soul is our mind, our emotions, and our desires, our free will. That's the three aspects of our soul. So we're using our mind a lot in writing a book, and that is kind of fun. It engages the mind. But the creative process, the place where creation comes from and inspiration, is that place of spirit, I believe, not soul. So we're the spirit and the soul start to work together to
Mhm.
create this book. And so it's you have to give it time. Like you'll sit down, like I would sit down, and for the first hour, it's probably my mind.
Right,
It's is my grammar correct? Is
right,
this a good sentence? You know,
right,
does the paragraph make sense? Like
right.
that's that our mind is analysis, judgment, thinking. So I'm using my mind. If I can sit for a while and be in my project, the creative process for me personally starts to flow after that first hour. That's when I'm starting to hear, oh, why don't you write about this right here? Or
Mhm.
tell this story. Oh, this would be good to bring in this other thing. So I start to hear more inspiration. So I do think chunks of time are really important. And I also think your environment needs to be very peaceful. Like I like flowers and gardens, like nice music, like something where my spirit does feel settled. So I do think that the real deep like creative process also likes this like this thing going on with your environment. Not that you can't write at a library. I spent a lot of time at the library, but that was maybe more editing and
Right,
it's quiet and there's like a lot of minds in there. So I just felt like my mind is real engaged in the library, like it's connecting to all these other people thinking and reading. But I do think chunks of time and even taking retreats, if you can, like a retreat by yourself
right,
where you're going to go and your goal is to sit and read and write your book and you give it kind of time on these retreats. You go for a walk in nature, something like that, to really like stay connected to those both of those aspects of us, our spirit and our soul. Like stay connected. It's very hard, especially I don't know lately, there's so many distractions.
right. And I think that's the advice you gave is going to help a lot of our readers in terms of when they hit dreaded moments, like when they're having a writer's block and when they feel that the they're no longer as creative as when they started penning their thoughts or their ideas for their book. Now, Tonyah, let's talk about goals. Let's talk about your personal and professional book goals for this year. What do you have in store? What are your plans?
So this is so interesting because, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work to get a book out. It's like birthing a baby, right? And
Right.
I got carpal tunnel, like right. after my book got released. And my body feels a little funky, like just a little, it's a lot of this, right? This is kind of interesting. So I know I need to promote my book, but the truth is, I'm going to go take a retreat in the forest for about a month. And I might read my book and write some things on my social media and
Right.
do some little videos about one-liners in my book. But I'm actually going to set, and people are telling me, no, you gotta promote it. Like you gotta get out there. But for me, I like to wait to hear like some more guidance. Like I have a lot of people wanting to work with me now, and I want to hear like work with this group, so in order for me to hear like that next step that I need to take without getting like what everybody else is telling me to do, I need to just really like retreat and have restoration. And I
Yeah,
think that
that's
that's important. Like you're saying, you get that block in creative flow. Well,
right.
for me, creation in the middle of the forest, it's all around. It's like this massive energy
Right.
going and sitting by a lake and seeing wildflowers or something like that. And that's how I'm going to spend the next month. Now, when I come out of my retreat, I think I'll be more clear. I've already been working with groups of people teaching the practice, and I've had great responses from people actually sitting with me doing the practice.
Right.
And after all the writing process, I'm really excited to be face to face with people.
Right.
Even this, I mean, this is so fun just talking about it versus, writing. So this next year, I'm just going to try to get into places, recovery centers, churches, yoga centers, whoever will take me, whoever's interested. And I have quite the Indian, I have a Hopi Indian chief, not Hopi, it's Lakota
All
spiritual
right.
man. He wants me to work with Indians. And I think that sounds really exciting to me. So who knows where it will go? I
Right.
and I just am going to follow that path. But I do know the rest of my life is dedicated
Mhm.
still. Now I have a path for the rest of my life that's exciting. So the rest of my path is teaching this practice, which is really that's my book promotion.
Right. And I'm quite sure there are a lot of our viewers and listeners right now who are very much interested to get a copy of your book. So where can we pick up a copy of your latest book?
Well, I'm actually trying to encourage everyone to buy it off of Amazon.
Mhm.
Because if you get so many sales off of Amazon within the first 3 months, they'll put like a bestseller sticker on your book,
Right.
right? So it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, my publisher's website, Westbow Press, but
Mhm.
I'm really pushing the Amazon.
Amazon's the way to go. And I don't want to go ahead and reveal too much of your book.
Mhm.
I want our viewers and listeners to go grab themselves a copy of it. So I think I would like to ask you for a final message.
My final message is I really want to encourage people to take that season, to really just say, I'm going to dedicate a season of time for me to become self aware,
Right.
aware of my soul, aware of spirit, whatever name you want to call that, God, higher power, it's there. So I just want to tell people it's not as hard as a lot of spiritual paths make it. And I think my book is pretty easy to understand how to get on this path to higher power. So that's what I really hope for people, because it's amazing when you do that inner work, how your outer life
Mhm.
starts to get transformed.
Mhm.
And really, I think that's what we all crave on some level, is for our inner life, that inner peace, to be promoting all that outer peace, that inner power, to have power in the outer world. Who we are begins to affect the people around us.
Right.
So I just really hope that people will make that a priority in their life. And I just say this over and over, it's just a season. It's just a period of your life, and life goes by so fast.
Right.
So take that time to claim these inner aspects of ourselves that, it's our divine, it's our true nature. It's what a lot of people are teaching right now, how to find your true nature. It's my version of what your true nature is, and it's worth the time to find it for sure.
Tonyah, this has been a short but interesting conversation. And I would like to thank you personally for letting us have you on the show this episode.
Thank you so much, Ray. You asked great questions, and I just feel so satisfied about that.
I'm hoping that by your next book, should you have a next book, that be able to catch up again and talk here at the Author Roundup and just have you for the second time. I'm wishing you the best in your plans. And again, thank you so much for allowing us to have you in today's show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everybody. Blessings, and go in grace.
Well, thank you so much to both our viewers and listeners on our YouTube and podcast channels. Now, before you go, show some love by subscribing to our channel. Stay tuned for our next interview on the Book Connection Show, where we meet extraordinary indie voices with incredible stories. This is Ray Walters. Thank you.